All right, what's up, everyone? RANO'SReactions.com. You already know. Go check out the merch. We about to get started. This is Alex Hormozi. Here we go. How to get ahead of 99% of the people, right? So this some this is straight up an hour long of straight just free game for Alex Hormozi. If you guys want to check out the video yourselves, I'm gonna drop the link down below. Say no more. Let's get into it.
50 businesses does over $10 million a year in sales. And that means that 99% of entrepreneurs never hit it. Every business that I've started since I was 25 has crossed 10 million. B2B services with Gym Launch, B2C consumer products with Prestige Labs, our supplement company, Allen, our B2B software, and acquisition.com, which is an investment firm for all of the money that we made during those businesses to invest in other ones. I feel really confident that I can talk to the points of helping you go from 0 to a million to 10 million, and beyond. And so this is just a visual, put this in context. 90% of businesses never hit $1 million a year in sales. 90%. Doesn't look that way on Instagram, but this is the vast majority of businesses, right? Now 9% of businesses cross this $1 million.
Yeah, don't let those Instagram gurus fool you, man.
Dollar threshold, right? And then only 0.4%, which is 1 in 250.
0.4%, not 4%. 0.4%. Listen up, guys.
Do 10 million plus. It's so rare. And so the nice thing is that success does leave clues. I want to kind of separate this into two major categories. One is the entrepreneur, and the other is the opportunity vehicle they're pursuing. You'll notice I said leverage rather than opportunity vehicle, but fundamentally leverage is the difference between what you put in and what you get out. And so you want to have the best entrepreneur.
You gotta take some notes, man. I'm even taking some notes. Note takers are the money makers. This is my first take watching this, so you know that's why I'm taking the notes, man.
You've got skills, you've got character traits, you've got beliefs. I've thought about this more, and I've actually simplified it to one degree, which is I think you just have skills and beliefs. Character traits, if you think about this, you're like, I want to become patient. Patient is just a general term for lots of little skills. And so if you want to become more patient, you want to do things that patient people do. And that means that if I can train someone to become more patient, then patience is a skill. And so as a total side quest on this, what's interesting about this is that you've probably heard people say soft skills and like hard skills. In my opinion, hard skills are just skills that are easy to measure. Soft skills are just hard to measure, but they're both 100% skills that you can train. And
that's 110% true, man. Like there's so many things that people know how to do, but it's just hard for them to measure their skills. Their skills are not probably at a potential or at a reach where it's measurable for whatever the standard is. They might not be there yet, but they're able to get it done.
Improve. And so if we say, man, I wish that guy had better people skills, what we mean is 100 micro skills that are like, I wish he would smile when someone walked in the room. Can I train someone to do that? Absolutely. If I said, hey, I wish he would greet someone by their first name immediately every time they walk in the door, right? Boom, that's trainable. I wish someone wouldn't interrupt. It's like, okay, well, we can just give someone a cookie every time they don't interrupt someone. And let someone finish their statement, and then we train them. And so all of these soft skills are just soft because they're hard to measure. Doesn't mean that they're not skills or they're not important. And oftentimes, most of us know that like within an organization, like the way that you gain influence is the soft skills that are hard to measure, but incredibly important. So if we're talking about how do we make the highest leverage entrepreneur, we want somebody who has lots and lots of skills, and really it's about beliefs that don't limit them. If someone had no limits in terms of what they believe they could achieve, then the only thing that would limit them was their skills. But most
listen, y'all heard of that? Listen, you're in your own way. Listen to this.
Of the times,
I'm a double back. You're in your own way.
Really, it's about beliefs that don't limit them. If someone had no limits in terms of what they believe they could achieve, then the only thing that would limit them was their skills. But most of the times, the beliefs that we have are things that just decrease our potential. And it's not really our fault, because most of the people that were around us when we grew up, just by statistics, were poorer than you might want to be. And so they told you how they see the world. If there's ever something that's going to be on my tombstone, it's this quote, which is,
oh, y'all ready to subscribe if you want to listen to this quote. Like it right now if you want to listen to this quote.
We question all of our beliefs, except for those that we truly believe, and those we never think to question.
Damn, that itself is literally saying you're in your only fucking way, bro. And like you said, it might not be your fault what you were taught, what you were put upon you, but it is up to you. You're an adult now. You're a young adult, whatever it is. It's up to you to turn it around. You know, It's up to you, and it's up to you to turn it around for the gen coming underneath you.
That you actually believe, they're so invisible to you because that's just your lens through which you see the world. Whereas when you're like, oh, I want to debate this point, it's like you don't really believe that, you just have an opinion on it, or you have some assumptions that you're willing to back, right?
Okay.
But the true beliefs of like, well, no one would be willing to pay for something like that, or like that doesn't exist. I didn't know that was possible. You don't even question those things because they weren't even in your mind to begin with. It's the unknown unknowns that are the things that limit us. The question is, how do we up-level someone's beliefs? So let me give you
listen up.
a quick example here. So there was an entrepreneur that I know who had a fitness app. He was a super high.
Yo, this is a banger. If you guys enjoying this one, subscribe. This is honestly a banger. We just barely getting started. Four minutes into the video, and there's so much knowledge already here. You know, so much that we had to pause to dissect. You're gonna have to pause to dissect.
So let me give you a quick example here. So there was an entrepreneur that I know who had a fitness app. He was a super high level CrossFit Games competitor. And he started this app, and he didn't want to tell anybody about it because he never placed top 3. He placed 4th place in multiple competitions, which is insane. But he had a belief that if he wasn't the winner, he didn't deserve to have an app. Like, think about how crazy that is. But he didn't question that. That was just what he believed reality to be. He's like, well, of course.
Damn, I feel that, bro. I put some pressure on myself. Like I feel like if I don't have something by this time, like I don't believe in myself being worthy of having that, and that's fucked up, man. That's true.
Of course I wouldn't want it. And so he built this app for himself and just the members of his gym, but the app was so good that people started sharing it. And finally, a client of his was a marketer and said, you need to start marketing this. You need to start posting about it. And he wouldn't post. And finally, she convinced him to just make one post, and he like doubled his revenue. He'd gone from like $20,000 a month to $100,000 a month with his app simply because he changed his beliefs.
Bro, listen up. This is Alex Hormozi. This ain't no bullshit. This ain't no, I know, man.
And so, like, fundamentally, he had all the skills. He was already a really good CrossFit Games competitor. He already had the product that was really good, and he already had the skills to be able to market it. He was just choosing not to.
Yeah, you know how many, just like myself, you know how many hours people are sleeping on themselves out there, man? You sitting on the other side of the screen, you sleeping on yourself, bro. You sleeping on yourself says you got skills that pay the bills, like Coin God said.
Unchaining an entrepreneur is figuring out the reasons they give for why they can't do something. Those are known limits, right? Well, I can't do it because of X. That's the things that you know because you can even explain it. I can't do it because I'm not number 1. I can't do it because I'm not in good enough shape. I can't do it because the app doesn't load well enough. I can't do it because it's only on one platform. I can't do it because insert whatever, right? Now, the dangerous ones are the unknown unknowns, all right? That's an N. My whole goal when I started my chain of gyms was that I wanted to be America's Next Gym. So I bought the trademark United Fitness. I was really proud of it. I had 6 locations. I joined this group of internet entrepreneurs. Now, mind you, the reason I think this is funny is because I was sold by the sales guy that there was other gym owners in the room and they were all like doing well and doing stuff on the internet too. Got in the room, not only were there no gym owners, there weren't even any brick and mortar business owners in the room. And so I was like, wow, this is a shock. And so everybody's going up there explaining their like ads and their funnels and their upsell process and all this stuff. And I get up there and I'm like, I own 6 gyms. And I was like, but these are the ads I run to get members into my gyms. The thing is, I gave this whole breakdown of everything I did and how I opened every location at full capacity on the first day without taking cash out of the pocket, all the stuff. And I remember the guy who was running the whole group, and I really looked up to this guy at that time because he was the first person who was like way more successful than me that I actually had access to. And so I think at that point he was doing $1 million a month. And I remember thinking like, whoa, like. And so I go through this whole presentation. I'm talking as fast as I can, explaining all the stuff that I do. And he stops and he's like, Alex, I don't think you should be in the gym business. And I remember hearing that. It was like time slowed down because I felt like he like punched me in the gut because this was like my whole plan, my whole dream. This is what I was going towards. But I like paused and just like heard him out. He said, you have a level 10 skill set and a level 2 opportunity. I don't think you should be running gyms. I think you should be teaching people how to do what you just walked through. And I had a belief, and I still do, that if someone's further along in the game of business, you always have things that you can learn from them. And if I paid to be in this room, if I don't take the advice, it's the closest thing to me burning all the money that I paid to be here. And so when he told me that, to me, that was an unknown.
That's some true shit, man. There's a lot of people out there that paid for some classes that I know, man, and they didn't take that game serious. That's sad, man. Some true shit.
Unknown. I didn't know that there was another opportunity vehicle outside of me just owning gyms. Like, I didn't know it was possible. So I hadn't thought like, I didn't know how franchises worked. I didn't know how licensing worked. I didn't know I didn't know how to B2B national, any.
And that's also another thing that separates a lot of the lower class, middle class, and the higher class. The higher class, you know, if the parents are running business, they're running LLCs, they're running S corps, they're running all these, they're running nonprofits, they're running all of these. They know the get down of them, right? The ins and out. Our parents are running what? Operating machines, like shit like that, you know, what are they gonna know about it, ins and outs of that? So like I said, it's up to us to know to shift the tables, turn the tables, and teach it to the youngins.
That stuff worked. Now there were sub skills that I would have to learn in order to enable it, but I couldn't even start on that skill path or see the deficiency of skills that I had because I didn't even think I could pursue it. And so these are the ones that, in my opinion, are the most powerful to overcome. It's the things that you didn't know were possible. I'll give you a different example. In Shane & Ferries, which is one of our portfolio companies, amazing business, super successful single location, and the founder had an agency when he approached me saying like, hey, I want to do what you did with Gym Launch, but with photography studios. And so we talked and we talked and we talked, and his model was so good. I was like, I don't know, man. I think like one of the things that I didn't have with Gym Launch is that like I couldn't control delivery. With photography, you can control delivery. And so that means that we could actually centralize a lot of stuff. I was like, what if we just owned all of them with like a hybrid model? We actually took the agency from what it was doing, which for most people watching this would be a very good business for you, to zero to start this next thing. We had such good rapport that he's like, if you really think so, and we walked through the math, and he's like, I mean, this makes sense, but like I'm gonna kill something that makes a lot of money. I was like, yeah, but I think it's gonna be for something that's gonna make way more. And then for the next 6 months, we worked and tweaked the original model to get this new model off the ground. And 30 months later, that business is $2.5 million a month with 30 plus locations because I said, let's just own it all. He didn't think that that was a model that was really available. And then as soon as we made that switch, everything took off. Even in my own personal story.
Damn, man, this is speaking volumes. We're just 10 minutes in.
Switch from having my gyms to doing a done-for-you fly around the country model, that took the same skills that I had as an entrepreneur and put them in a better vehicle. And then, even from doing the gym turnaround business for 2 years, I accidentally fell into the licensing model because I didn't want to fly out. Somebody asked me if I could just show them all the stuff that I did so they could do it for themselves. And then at that point, he bought it and it was all margin. And I was like, holy cow, this is insane. That's when everything took off like a rocket.
Yeah.
And so I had my brick and mortar gyms. And then I
see, this wasn't all planned, man. You asked me, I think Alex Hormozi, I'm sure a big part of it, I mean, he sat down, like he said, he tweaked a lot of things for a couple of months and then launch. But it all came with skills, you know. He thought he was just gonna own a bunch of gyms and that's was his way to the wealth, you know. Bro's killing it, man. Bro's one of the greatest, if not the greatest at what he does, and it's basically giving out free game.
scaled to a done-for-you turnaround business.
For us, what he gives, you know, what he does on his businesses, what he runs is his business.
And then I scaled to licensing, and each of those were higher leverage opportunities. And it was because I didn't know it was possible. And so once I learned that it was possible, that unlocked all of the potential value that my skills could have. Because fundamentally, in every
You understand this, bro? Like literally, he's telling you that that there's nothing between you and that reality that you so want, or that you not the one that you even believe of. You know, you have some reality for yourself that you believe. He's saying it could be 10 times better than that and greater than that. You just don't know it because it's the unknown. Think about it.
One of those examples, I knew how to do the same stuff. I knew how to market and sell for a local gym. I knew how to build them more profitably, create the workouts, the meal plans, all that kind of stuff that got people results. That's what I knew how to do. But at each level, when I went from gyms to
how many of y'all know how to do that yourselves, man? Come on, you know?
to turnarounds,
Well, not maybe not the gym and the launching and all that, but I'm saying the working out, the market, like
the leverage increased from each of these things. And so the same skill set put into a new bucket or a new vehicle unlocked huge value. And that's why a lot of entrepreneurs don't get past $1 million or even get to 10 million, is that they're in the wrong vehicle. So I talk about leverage a lot, and it's actually one of the core concepts in our logo. So we have a supply-demand curve, and then we have a fulcrum, which is the acquisition.com logo, and it's because it's core to everything we do. If you think about leverage, you've ever heard Archimedes, he said, give me a long enough lever and I can move the world. This is our lever, and we'll put our little hand here. That's my arm. If we grab the lever here, we have the most leverage on something that is here. If we grab the lever here, we still have the most leverage on something here, but we have less leverage
breaking
overall
this shit down. Listen up.
compared to how much we have on this side. And the main difference here is how much force goes up the other side. All right, and so leverage is the difference between what you put in and what you get out. That's it. So let me give you an example in the real world. If you are really skilled at cold calling, skill itself is leverage. Because if somebody who doesn't have the skill makes 100 phone calls, that's their input. And somebody who does have the skill puts 100 calls down. And the guy who doesn't have the skill gets 0 appointments set. And the guy who's amazing at it gets 10 appointments set. He has, well, let's just say the first guy had 1 for sake of math. He has 10 times the leverage on that skill compared to the newbie. Getting and acquiring skills gives you more leverage because it gets you more for what you put in. And so if you're more skilled entrepreneur, being a skilled entrepreneur is a big bucket for hundreds of smaller skills underneath of it, because it means that you know how to prioritize what to do next. And so one of my favorite quotes about leverage comes from Warren Buffett, Uncle Warren. He and one of his closest friends graduated Columbia Business School at the same time, same year, and he said that guy was smarter and harder working than him. Now, they then went their separate ways. Warren ended up getting into investing with Ben Graham, and his friend goes into the steel business, because that was back in the day when like American steel was like a thing, which it really no longer is. What he learned from that experience is that you fast forward 30, 40, 50 years, and he said his friend,
no free promos for that coffee, man.
Friend,
you know what it is? I ain't getting no free promo for that coffee.
You know, did okay. And he said, mind you, this is a guy who was smarter and harder working than him. He said he did okay, he did pretty well, but not close to what Warren did. And he said his biggest lesson from that was it's not about how hard you row, it's about what boat you're in. And I love
Ah, man. He's dropping, I'm saying, bro, we're only 12 minutes and 40 seconds in, and he's dropping so many gems, man.
that because
That speaks volumes. You know, if you're in the if it is your time right now on the time frame that you understand and relate to this, like it speaks volumes to you.
it really encompasses the concept of leverage, which is Warren got more out for what he put in than his buddy in the steel business, because the steel business had a lot of headwinds. You know, a lot of things going against them. They had globalizations that started happening. You had other imported steel that was cheaper from China, blah, blah, blah. And so those forces, he had to row harder against the wind than
Work smart, not hard. Listen.
Warren did while riding one of the best growth curves of the U.S. economy overall. And so he got higher returns. And so over my career, I make more now than I did before because I've moved further back along this lever. So I have more leverage now on what I put in than what I did before. When I was selling one-on-one in person and I was doing 20 consults a day, I was working more hours probably than I do now. But I get so much more for what I put in. So I'm going to show you 2 triangles that show increasing amounts of leverage. All right. Now, one of these,
this is making me want to just dissect this, take it to the whiteboard, and it should make you want to do the same too. You know, you have it in you as well.
Ruthlessly from Naval Ravikant. All right, and so he talks about the 4 types of leverage. I've renamed them so they're C's, and it's mostly just so I remember them more easily. But you've got collaboration, which just means other people working for you. All right. Then you've got capital, which means other people worked for you and gave you the fruit of their work so that you can invest it on their behalf. So for example, if I get people to give me $1 billion, which I could do, just raise the money, and then I invest that money, and I say I get 20% of the gain, I didn't have to work all the time to make $1 billion, but I still get 20% of it, right? That's the idea of using leverage of other people's money. So capital, so you've got collaboration, capital, you've got code, and content. If I'm a genius coder and I could build one piece of software, I can build it once and a million people can use that same piece of software. With content, Joe Rogan can make one podcast episode and millions of people can listen to it. And so he gets more for what he puts in, right? So if you think about each of these things, it's like you have the influence on someone else. I trade me selling for 40 hours a week to me managing a salesman for 2 hours who then sells for 40 hours a week. Or higher leverage, I spend a week or 2 weeks recruiting the best sales recruiter, and then I do that one time in my life for 2 weeks, and then that sales recruiter works 40 hours a week to get new salespeople in every single week on my behalf, and then those salespeople on my behalf then sell every single day. And so I did 2 weeks of work for 100 salespeople over the lifetime of that one hire. More leverage. I get more for what I put in. Compare that to me taking 20 consults a day. Yeah. Higher leverage skill, but same concept done at scale. Capital we went over, code, content. Those are the 4 types of leverage. Now, this is where this gets interesting because like once I learned this, I was able to put words to what I kind of knew intrinsically, and I can now explain it. So if you look at my career trajectory, let's see if I can draw a triangle here. All right. And one of the key points here is that you can actually just max out one of these things. So you don't need to have all four. Now, if you have all four, cool, but if you think about what leverage is in general, it's just you get more for what you put in. And so if you get 1000x on any of these, it's still 1000x. So somebody can just be an amazing private equity guy or amazing at raising money and become a billionaire. They don't need to do any of these other things, right? Somebody could be amazing at galvanizing people and creating movements, and they wouldn't need any of these other things. If someone's amazing at writing software, they don't need anyone else's capital, and the software does the collaboration on their behalf, right? And so all of these things, like even though they're structured like this, you don't have to have all of them. If you do have all of them, well, you look at Facebook, that is code about content. He raised other people's money and he has people working for him. But let me show you how this changed for me.
Exactly.
So in the beginning, it was dark. You know? I was an employee, right? And I made 4 figures a month. Then I became self-employed. I gained a little bit of leverage just over my own time. So I went from having someone else control my time to me controlling my time, which was leverage. All right, I got more for what I put in. And I went to 5 figures a month. All right, then I went to employing other people, right? Which is then, I would say the first level is me now having the first level of leverage. So I went to 6 figures a month, all right? And this is right as I would say first when I started my gyms and I had multiple gyms, and then when I transitioned that to turnarounds, I still stayed at 6 figures a month, but fundamentally it's because I actually didn't change leverage. I changed how I was structuring it, but fundamentally like it was people doing the same work. So this was both me being a gym owner with 6 locations and me doing the turnaround business with other people. You're like, how do you go from 6 figures a month to 7 figures a month? Then we started licensing. Now, what is that? I made content fundamentally, and then I made it once, and then many people could have access to it. And so when I did that, I went to 7 figures a month. Now, the question is, how do I get from 7 figures a month to 8 figures a month? Because that's what we have at acquisition.com. What did I add into it? Capital. So now we buy into companies that have other people working for them. I use content to attract those businesses.
Okay.
Now, I don't have any code right now. I have 1 software investment, maybe 2, I think, that are major investments. But the rest of my stuff, really, if we're talking about it, is that I made content, I had capital from the things that I'd done before, and we have the ability to get other people to help us get to our goals. And so this is acquisition.com. And that's 8 figures a month. Now, what do I need to do to get to 9 figures a month? I may just need to add time to the existing thing that I'm doing. Key point.
Man, you guys, look at the bro's screen. I think it's not pocket watch, but I think bro's got the 9
figures a month. I may just need to add time to the existing thing that I'm doing. Key point is that leverage is about getting more for what you put in. People who move faster in life don't actually move faster. They get more for their inputs. They get more for every step, right? I'm not like frenetically moving to move faster. You just get more out of every move. And so that means that if you're getting more out of every move, it's a function of time. And so if I had, for example, maybe some code that was implemented within everything that I do at acquisition.com, I might be able to get to 9 figures a month faster than I currently am. But I feel confident with these 3 that we'll get to 9 figures a month eventually. And so you might say, Alex, that might be a limiting belief. It might be, but that's kind of how I'm choosing to play it. And so, and let me like reverse the clock here. If I had just kept my gyms from the time I started my gyms until now, I might have 100 locations. And I might also already be doing 9 figures, not 9 figures, I'd probably be doing 8 figures a month from the gyms. And so you're like, well, wait a second. So was it the best move? I can't go back and replay time. I don't know. But that's where, to me, this is why the game gets interesting, is that every time you switch vehicles, you start at 0 again. So the pace that the leverage affords you for each step you take has to be disproportionate.
Damn, I had to hear that one, man. It's true, like you said, when you bring it back down, you might have to 0 out to just take off on it.
To me, this is why the game gets interesting, is that every time you switch vehicles, you start at 0 again. So the pace that the step you take has to be disproportionate, because year 4 of a business, you'll typically grow more than year 1 of a new business. And so that's where doing the same thing for a longer and longer period of time, you still get more leverage. The guy who owns Panda Express opened 600 new locations this year because he has done this, because now he has enough capital, he has enough collaboration that he's maxed. You know, he doesn't do any content and he doesn't have any code, right? But he has these 2 at such a high degree that when he adds 600 locations and each location does $3 million a year, right? it might even be, I don't know, it's a lot. And just to give you context, Panda Express in 2021 did 3.7 billion in top line sales, and he owns
2021.
100% of it, no outside investors, with his wife, Peggy, and they took home
Ridiculously stacked.
27% net margins on brick and mortar food. All right, so let's do the math. That's 935 million in income. Like, that was his distributions from owning this thing. Now if you're like, wait, but did he pay taxes on it? Sure didn't. Why? Because he owns all the land in the dirt for most of the locations that he had that are freestanding. So he depreciated all of that against his income. So he took all of that tax
Write-offs.
free.
Woo!
So, point being, he did this, and you're like,
bro, cleared that check.
well, how did he do it? He's been making chicken and orange chicken and Kung Pao chicken for 45 years. So even though he might not have been in the highest leverage vehicle, he was able to stick with that vehicle for 45 years. And being
might not be the healthiest, might not be the best food out there, but he's
able to
I know y'all buy
stick with
that orange chicken.
Something for 45 years makes it really hard to suck. And when you do that, you start unlocking multipliers on the leverage you have. Rather than thinking, I need more leverage in terms of more types of leverage, maybe you just need more of the one that you've been using since you started with. Remember I gave the little phone call example of like two people doing the same thing, one person has more leverage? Well, each of these things are big buckets with many smaller skills underneath of it. So collaboration is, I have to know how to recruit talent. I have to know how to recognize talent. I have to know how to onboard. I have to know how to train. I have to know how to manage. I have to know how to grow talent. And I have to know how to run meetings, and I have to know how to have one-on-ones, and I have to, like, you know what I'm saying here? Like, all of those micro skills chunk up to collaboration. For capital, it's like you have to be good at math. Being bad at math is probably not, it'd be tough to raise capital if you really can't do math, right? It's like, okay, well, that's a skill you need to know. Well, what else do you need to know? It's like, well, you need to be able to reach out to people and get rejected. Why? Because when you try and raise capital, you get rejected a lot more times than you get checks, right? From there, it's like you also probably have to have an understanding of legal because you have to learn how to set up a fund structure. You also have to know how to negotiate because every single person who writes you a check is going to want different terms. You then have to structure it in a way and negotiate so that you can get mutually beneficial terms for both parties. So these are all other skills that go into raising capital, right? Making content, it's like you have to understand the different platforms. You have to understand how to tell stories. You have to understand how to and even understanding here is just like, you might even have to just do the work to have credibility to make the content about whatever you're making it on. And you know what, I'm gonna side quest this real quick. A lot of people make content right now and they're trying to hit it big. But what they do is, like in my opinion, you've got entertainers and you've got educators.
Okay.
The thing is that a lot of people who haven't done shit are trying to educate on things they haven't done. And so they have no credibility. And so the thing is that like the reason Mr. Beast.
That's 110% right, man. Like I see a lot of out here gurus, trying to teach shit that they've never they have nothing to show for. So what I'm trying to say is like they make the money off the sales of like selling you the shit just to show you the lifestyle that they ain't really living off the shit they say.
Was able to get so big is that when he was 15 years old, he wasn't teaching people about business. He was being funny and being cool. People are like, oh, I want to be like him. And so then they say, oh, I'm going to educate people on house flipping. But they're 22 years old and they haven't flipped that many houses. And so they have no credibility in their content. And so, in my opinion, when you're doing this content thing, if you're gonna do it, then make sure that you have the backing of experience and proof, because then I promise you, like when you get shit on from the public, because you will, because they don't know who you are, and most people are lying, you'll be able to know that what you're saying is true because you lived it. And so then you won't second guess yourself.
In my last video, I just reacted to Alex. It's something he also brought up. He said he's a person that likes to cross his T's, dot his I's, before he came out and spoke on things, because he just likes to be secure about himself like that. I could relate to that. I'm an overthinker myself. I want to have it all T's crossed, I's dotted, just before I speak out. I go back and forth with my mentor, Nitty, himself. Like, he knows, like, I'm like, he always says it. You got to upload, bro. You got to record. People want to see you also got to remember, people want to see you do the fuck ups, like, because like he said, people don't believe that it's capable of being done. But when they see somebody that just went through shit, like he said, the dark times, we believe in Alex. Why? Because we've seen the pictures from before. We know he has actual equity. He's not out here trying to show us $1,000 or whatever Gucci belts and shit like that. He's out here no flashy. He's out here in a trucker hat. That's probably what, $15 without the acquisition logo, $30 with the acquisition now. He's a real humble dude out here putting us on game. Not charging us for the game. Acquisition.com, free online, free game. 60 minutes of free game. he's that guy. He really did that shit. He's putting on that whiteboard for us.
The people who like tank and self-implode because they're like they can't handle the hate is because on some level they believe it. So if you want to be an educator, then I think that the middle ground, the pre-education stage, is the documentation stage where you just say, this is what I'm doing now, check it out.
Yeah, exactly. What am I saying?
Like right now, I can't.
Show the fuck up, show the path, the road, you know? And that's what I feel like I'm trying to do with this channel, with my art channel, because I know how to do graphics. Like, I'm not gonna put myself on here and be like, I'm a jack of all trades, because that's what bros told me not to do, and that's what we're not gonna do, you know? But we know if we gotta get it done, we get it done. And we know how to do it. But I'm not out here just trying to monetize all that shit. Because like you said, people are gonna be like, well, where'd you do this, and that? I can get it done. Doesn't mean I did it for the past couple years. So I gotta record all this shit. Like you said, add some history to it, to yourself, add some history to your skills, and then maybe it'll be valid.
Educate really on not really, excuse me. I can't educate on 9 figures a month. Haven't been there. I know what 8 figures a month is. Don't know how to get to 9 figures a month. I have my theory, which is that I just have to add time to this equation. The math spells that out, but I just gotta wait. Once I get there, then I can talk about how to build $1 billion portfolio. And you can imagine how my content might change.
Respects. That's dude. He's speaking on this and just letting us know the real truth. You know, earlier I was talking about like, oh, he probably touched it, but nah, I was wrong. He's keeping it blunt.
Right? And so if you're making 6 figures a year and trying to talk about how to make 7 and you've never made 7, then you're full of shit. And you rightfully should get the hate that you do. Right?
Correct.
And so these are skills that you have to learn how to acquire to make content. And to make code, you have to learn how to go code. And this is how little I know about coding. This is it. So I would even give you examples of micro skills, but like you have to learn HTML and JavaScript and Ruby and Python. That's about it. That's all I know.
He knows some game, bro. Named a bunch of languages.
And data architecture. And yep, that's it. That's all I got. And so you have to learn these smaller skills to then say I'm very excellent at code so that I can then have more leverage on the things that I do. And then you can walk yourself up this income ladder with more leverage, right? And again, leverage is about speed. Any of these vehicles that I had done, if I had done it for 45 years like Mr. Panda, you could get there because my N on input is so high. If I spend 45 years doing something, I might not have the strongest arm, but I've done it 45 times more, so I still get more out than the guy that's over here that does it 2 times. This is where strategy comes into play, is making sure that you're picking the right vehicle. Chris, for example, made less money in the first 9 months scaling Enchanted Fairies than he did before. But at month 10, he matched it. At month 24, it was like so small in comparison that it didn't even matter. But I can tell
Beliefs and skills.
you this, really easy to say this, really hard to do that. For 9 months, eat shit and feel like you're losing, and always knowing that you could always go back, and that's the hard part, go back to what you were doing before that was comfortable.
Listen, all you listen.
And made you X versus staying the path. And I can tell you, it's hard for me. I mean, my team does that. Like going from making what I was making at Gym Launch to
hitting home, guys.
Doing acquisition.com the first year, I was like, this sucks. Like I'm used to being able to run any personal expense through this business and not even blink. I'm like, oh, I actually have to look at cash flow. Right? And so like these are things that you have to like take in, but I do believe genuinely year 10 of acquisition.com I think is bigger than year 15 of Gym Launch to make the apples to apples comparison, because the thing is that you actually never get an apples to apples comparison because you can't go back in time.
Exactly.
And so you have to look at what year 10 of one business is compared to year 3 of another. And so if you're at your 6th year, maybe you should just keep riding it out, because whatever you started with is the thing that you have the longest lever on number of times that you got reps in. And people want to change industries, and I'll give you a little tidbit from Y Combinator. One is they don't take solo founders, as a side note. Now, mind you, they're only interested in billion-dollar companies. So if that's not you, then you could totally be a single founder. But it's just harder to be successful with one person's skills versus 3. The second interesting thing that they have many things they select for, but one of them is industry experience. And so if someone says, hey, I want to get into this industry, if you don't have any experience in that industry, and then second to that is personal experience, like you suffered from whatever problem you're trying to solve, then they're not interested. And so you might have 6 years of experience in the mortgage business. I wouldn't recommend getting into weight loss. I would say maybe you take a half pivot so you're in the same industry, because it's so hard to make up those 6 years. This hopefully gives you a more nuanced view to making the right picks, to making the most money. By the way, if you guys like the whiteboard and me drawing on with markers, this is a throwback to what I used to do. I finally got another board. Love these things. But if you like this style, like, let me know. I love this style, but I just try and do the things that the data suggests that you like the most. I'll do what you guys want so that I can hopefully transfer the skills that I have to you faster. I said earlier that the unknown unknowns are the most expensive thing in business, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. And so I want to give you a quantifiable example. And I remember the first time I heard this, it changed my life. And so it was actually a whiteboard just like this. So you get to, like, I'm getting goosebumps. You'll have the same experience I did. So a guy was on stage and he gave this whole presentation about learning skills and about how you have to invest in yourself to get better, right? And he called somebody in the audience and he said, ma'am, and as he's saying this, he's doing what I'm doing. He says, ma'am, how much money do you make right now per year? She stood up and she said $50,000 a year. He was like, okay. So what would be the main reason that you wouldn't want to invest today, right? So he was closing. This was actually a close. But as a side note, I think the reason I like sales so much is because many of the obstacle overcomes that you learn to overcome are actually self-bullshit. And so in a way, like, learning how to sell other people, for me, was learning how to sell myself. Because I had so much head trash of, like, why I couldn't do things, or why I shouldn't start now, or why I had to think about it, or why I needed permission from someone else, or why the universe was stacked against me to be successful. Like, these are all things that I had to learn the arguments against to convince myself to do stuff. And so he asked the lady, he says, okay, so what would make you not want to invest in this? And she says, well, I don't have the money. And he said, well, you probably don't have the money because you've been paying a really expensive bill every single year. And she's like, what do you mean? He's like, well, right now, you've been paying $950,000 a year, not knowing how to make $1 million. He said, this is the cost of your ignorance. This is the debt that you carry for the rest of your life until you learn how to make $1 million. And so the reason I'm so heavy on learning
That said 16 ignorance.
skills and becoming educated is that right now I'm paying down ignorance debt. I'm paying down $950 million a year not knowing how to make $1 billion. It's the debt I'm paying, right? Like, we all pay ignorance debt. And so the idea is, how quickly can I pay this down so that I can have more cash flow to continue to pay this down faster? Now, strategy, like I said earlier, is about how you allocate limited resources against unlimited options. That's the fancy word of just saying prioritizing, all right? And so right now, you have limited resources. You have time and you have money. Now, you might have more time than money, but either way, you have some limit on what you have. And so for you to move faster, you have to identify, prioritize the thing that you're going to allocate your time and money towards, right? And you want the thing that gets you the most for it. Remember the input-output that we had earlier, the leverage? So you want the thing that gives you the most leverage. Now, one of the tough parts about reality is that the things that you have access to when you have fewer resources are less than the things that you have access to when you have more resources. Like, Mr. Panda can go buy a building for $1 billion and flip it for $2 billion in a year or two and make $1 billion. Because he has more resources than you do, and you can't do that, right? Not right now. But you do have things that could get you there, which is why Charlie Munger talks about how do whatever you can do, beg, borrow, steal, eat ramen, walk with your lunch pail both directions, do whatever you have to do to make your first 100,000. It's because he understands, and mind you, him saying 100,000 is probably like $1 million today, because he knows that once you get that, you can actually get a little bit more leverage in terms you get way more for what you put in, because you can't only put your time in because it's so limited in terms of how much you can do. All right.
Noted.
So,
Noted. Y'all heard of that? That was a big gem right there.
this is why I talk about investing in the S&P 500 more than the S&P 500. So if you don't know this, it's Standard & Poor's 500 companies on the stock exchange. It's probably like the gold
S&P 500
standard index that we track how the U.S. economy is doing. It's really just the stock market in general is doing. All right, and so if you dollar cost average in the S&P 500, you get 9 to 10% a year for life, or at least that's what it's done historically. All right, so the question is, rather than investing in this, we just have to say, can we do anything that gets us more than 10% back? Great, now we can quantify this. And so if I have, let's say, $1,000, right? And here's the magic of this, is that when you invest $1,000 into the S&P, you have nothing else that you add to that 1,000. Like, you can't juice the 1,000. You buy in at the same valuation that every other investor buys in at. And so I'll tell you one of the magics. I'm going to open up the curtain here for a second. One of the magic of what we do at acquisition.com is that we pair capital with know-how. And so we can buy a company at a decent valuation and have a big margin of safety because of our skill set. So we know that we can triple or 10x the business when we invest in it. So we don't have to pick amazingly. Like Warren Buffett's a better picker, always will be than I am, right, at picking businesses. But Warren Buffett doesn't work in the business, right? So that's the advantage. That's my advantage over Warren Buffett right now. Mind you, he has way more advantages over me. Right? He made 90 billion on his Apple trade. But,
There's a but. Hold on.
this is the
Bro's still hanging on. Hold on.
game that I'm supposed to play right now, because here's the leverage that I have on him. I have 60 more years of life than he does, right? He's 93, I'm 33.
Exactly.
So I have a lot more of these left on my,
exactly.
on my move set, okay? Now, we have our $1,000. We get 10%, meaning at the end of the year, we're at
Hope that
$1,100
didn't go over your guys' head.
roughly, okay? Or let's say you buy a sales training course. They teach you how to sell, and you get implementation from that where they review some of your calls so that you can improve. And all of a sudden you take your income from $40,000 a year to $220,000 a year. Okay, well, what does that mean? That means that 1,000, think about this return. All right, in scenario 1, you have $1,100. In scenario 2, and here's the crazy part, you have an extra 180,000.
Yep.
All right, so compare this to that. But here's the crazy part. This is every year.
Woo!
Because once you have the
SN
skill,
me.
you only get better from there. And so one of the things my dad used to tell me that when I was growing up
So true, man. So true. Like I said, invest in skills that pay the bills.
was that he was always really big on education, because he came here, $1,000, didn't speak the language, and he learned English. Like that was a skill he didn't have. Like we take so many skills for granted. Like the man he couldn't even speak the language of the country, right? In $1,000, and he was able to take his medical school education and apply it here in the US because he fled during the revolution in Iran. And he said, the one thing that no government can take from you and no wife can steal from you in a divorce, and you can't get sued out of,
Skills.
is your education. They can't take it from you. And he had
When Nipsey says, we got a quote right here, man. The game is going to test you. Never fold. Stay 10 toes. It's not on you. It's in you. And what's in you, they can't take it away. The hustle way. Nipsey Hussle's quote.
relatives who were actually really well off, who actually owned the lottery in Iran. So it was a private company, so they made a lot of money.
Oh, wow.
But they were like second and third generation, and they hadn't learned the skills. And so when they fled during the revolution, they could only take what they could carry because all of their assets got seized by the government. And they never were able to go back to what they had because they didn't have the skills. Because the government could take their assets, but they didn't have the education, right?
Yep. And that's what they've said, man. Like true assets, the true wealth won't be handed down to the youngins also in assets. It'll be handed down, like I said, what you teach them, the skills you teach your youngins, the skills you use to pay the bills is the skills they're gonna copy off you, the way you eat is the way they're gonna eat. So what you hand to them is what they're gonna have to carry on forward after you're checking out.
The guys who were businessmen from Iran, straight to LA, became businessmen in LA and crushed it there too.
Exactly.
Because they understood the game, right? And so this is why, like, if you think about it from actually an investment
Game is gonna test you, don't fold. Nipsey Hussle.
perspective, like education can't go down, it can't be taxed, it can't be taken from you, and only gets better over time, right? And it compounds unto itself. Because when you learn the next skill, so let's say this is what the lift we got from sales, then you learn lead gen. And then all of a sudden this, because then you 5x the demand on your sales skills, and you just paid down your ignorance debt with 2 investments. And so, like, is that worth it more than putting the money in the S&P? In my opinion, every fucking time. Is going from 40 to 220 realistic? If you're a killer and you're part of Hormozi Nation, absolutely.
Fuck yeah, hell
do it
yeah.
the way we tell you to do it, which is you look at the top guy on whatever company, whatever team, and you do twice what they do.
Yep. Take
Because you know why? Because they're gonna be better than you. And so you gotta make it up in inputs. It's like, but Alex, does that mean I'm gonna have to work harder and longer hours?
Fuck yeah.
You bet. Welcome to the world. Like, because think about it. If you work the same hours as that guy always has the advantage because he's already better than you. And so if he puts a month in and you put a month in, he's gonna get further ahead than you because he already has skills through which to judge his own performance and improve. And so you have to put way more inputs in to get the same output than that guy. And so that's why Kobe spent 5 summers doing 2-a-days when everyone else was doing 1-a-day because he knew he had to make up for the guys who were way better than him naturally. And so like I would like to think of everybody in Mozi Nation as mini Black Mambas from that perspective, is that we're willing to put in twice the work, 3 times the work, 4 times the work, despite the natural talent deficiencies to make up for it. Because on a 5-year or a 10-year or a 25-year timeline, you become unbeatable. Do I think you can get to 220?
Exactly. And another thing I want to add on to that, what he says, like, you might not have the skills off the jump. You might have to put in the OT and the work, and you might have to just thug it out. You might just have to, row the boat through against the river. But at the end of the day, that person that has the skills are going to get comfortable sooner or later. There's going to be a time where they get comfortable, And when they get comfortable, it's because they feel like, the skills were always in me. They don't have to practice them. They don't have to go out there, like you said, Kobe, Mamba mentality, to go put 2-3 times more of the work in that the other cat did, just to keep, when that cat sleeps and you've still been putting that time working, it's off. You took off on them.
Hell yeah. But if you were to just look at average, which I don't want you to be, but if you were to look at average, you might make 100 a year or 120 a year. It would still triple what you were making before. And if you don't adjust your living from what you were making at 40, Mr. Smart Cookie, then now you have, even at 120, if this was 120, you have 80K a year extra that you can then invest in more skills to pay down your ignorance debt. A key point here is I said that there was an advantage that I have over Warren Buffett, which is I got money and time / effort, right? If you go spend the money, but you don't put this in, then you lose your advantage. And so it's not just about spending the money, because here's an interesting factoid for you. When you sell someone, you understand that the moment someone buys, they actually feel like they've solved the problem emotionally. And so you can sell that because you learn how to sell. But the reality is that just gives them the license to begin solving the problem, education-based. Here's my ask for you guys. One of the beliefs that I think has served me well is that whenever I joined a group or I joined a community or free or paid or otherwise, I always wanted to become number one. And the way that I thought about that was, and I always wanted to join groups of people who are all ahead of me. Like when I joined that internet group that I was talking about earlier, everybody there was making more money than me. How do I get status in this group? And the way that I did that was like, be good, you know what I mean? Make more money. And so what I did was I talked to every single person in the group, and I had only my small skill set, and I gave it to them for free. And I want to fucking hit on this because I get DMs every day about this. Guy this morning even said it. He said, Alex, I want to make you 100 videos for free if you're willing to employ me. The amount of times that I get this request, whether it's I want to make you this website in exchange for a job. The point of Mozi Nation, the point of everything that I do at acquisition.com that I hope to live by example is that you give first without asking. You're doing it wrong, right? You think, because like, and the press like, hey, in the spirit of Mozi, it's like, you're not doing it in the spirit of Mozi Nation, you're doing the spirit of John, all right? You're doing the spirit of you. The way that you do it is that you give, and then you give, and then you give, and then you give, and you keep on giving until that person is like, dude, what can I do for you? And then you make your ask. Like whenever I get frustrated and I think, like, why do I even bother doing this? Like I think about giving up. I just think, this is where most people stop, and this is why they don't win. It transitions into one of my most used sayings to myself. I don't say it a lot out loud, but to myself, I say, like, I won't do my best, I'll do what's required. And so right now, what is required for you to win or get a job or get the skill might be better than your best. And so it just means that your best just needs to get better. All right, so you might be riled up and be like, I'm gonna go do this and take over the world and make all the money. So, but you're like, fuck, I gotta pay bills. So how do we take this and then put it into reality? Number one is like, and this is how you transfer any skills in general, by the way, a little sneak peek from the book that's coming out. All right, coming soon.
Yeah, I can't wait to comment down below if you're gonna get Alex Hormozi's 100 million lead book.
Is that you have, so the person who's teaching you documents the skill. That's step one. Step two is that they do it in front of you, so they demonstrate it. And the third piece is duplicate. You do it in front of them. So document, demonstrate, duplicate. Now, I can do this, and I can do this, but you have to do this. I can't duplicate it for you. You have to take the stuff and actually execute on it. And so if you're like, okay, Alex, what does that actually look like in my life?
Listen up, this is literally the formula. He's writing it all down to how to execute everything he just said.
I'm actually a big proponent of having jobs, and I think that's probably taboo nowadays. But yeah, why not get paid to learn shit? And if you're like, well, the place that I work at doesn't teach me anything, then you should absolutely go apply for other jobs. Like, change your conditions, all right? So I'm all about get paid to learn. And as an aside, the reason that keeping your living expenses low is so important is because if, let's say, you make $100,000 a year now, and you're like, Alex, I got a pretty good white collar job right now, but I really want to get into this. Then it might mean that you have to go from $100,000 a year to $30,000 a year to learn the skill. Because right now you go from earning to learning. All right, and like I want to tell you, like, I walked this walk. So I was a management consultant at a boutique strategy firm in DC. Like I had a top secret clearance. I was 20. Like I did shit that people could brag about. All right, and then I went and became a personal trainer at a gym for $14 an hour. Think about that. I went from a high-rise condo that I owned to renting someone's bedroom for $400 a month in their house.
Talk about, like you said, eat shit just to be able to fucking double it up later.
All right, and I went from having, Hugo Boss suits to wearing Beast Mode Engaged t-shirts, all right? And showing up at 4 a.m. like ready to teach Nancy how to lose the last 5. You know what I mean? And so like, I had to swallow my pride on this because I wanted to get learned, all right? And so you have to be willing to relinquish getting paid for getting learned, all right? Once you get yourself in an environment where you actually have a business that is investing in you, and it doesn't mean that they actually have to write checks, to be clear. Now, if you have a company that's willing to do that, awesome. Level 1 is you communicate to them, this is the skill that I would like to learn upon working for you. And so you're like, these are the skills that I bring to the table, this is what I would like to learn. Is this a place that I can do that? Any business owner loves clear communication. It's like, if you want to learn that, and if they're a good business owner, they'll be like, let me help you support. Now, if they're like, my job isn't to teach you, wrong place. And I'm gonna be real, a lot of business owners are like that. And so if you're like, well, man, it's not fair. It's like, well, I mean, getting paid to learn is a pretty good deal. It's just that that's not always what happens. And so I would say, switch your conditions. But let's say you finally get into a business that teaches you stuff and you feel like you're getting better, you're moving faster. I would say once you feel like, and this is a big caveat, this is like fucking caveat. Once you have nothing left to learn from the current position, you communicate to them that you feel like your learning is slowed down. And then they may give you another opportunity to learn more. And if they feel like they can't actually teach you internally, they might say, I'll pay $10,000 a year for you to go through these programs or workshops or seminars or whatever, so you can, or certifications, so you can continue to level up your skill. A good employer will do that. And if you look at big corporate America, as much as people shit on them, they usually have pretty strong corporate reinvestment programs. Like why? Because they want their human capital to appreciate. And so if you can pay $10,000, because they do the same S&P 500 except the S&U 500, right? They invest in you $10,000 and they get a 3 times more valuable person. Like one of the biggest arbitrage opportunities, side note, this is me talking to business owners, that's out there in the marketplace is that you can pay 25% more for an A player versus a B player and you get 5 times the output. So like you think about value arbitrage, like instead of paying 100 a year if that's the market, pay 125 and get 5 times the output. Why would you never make that trade? Once you've done this, here are the 3 steps that you can transition from getting learned back to getting paid. All right, number 1 is that you live below your means. The less risk you take in your personal life, the more risk you take in your business life. Let's say that I own a business that does $10 million a year in profit, okay? If my living expenses are $800,000 a month, then I'm not leaving much for the business to weather a storm. And let's say that it's all fixed. It's like mortgages and cars and jets and all the other stuff that I do. Well, if there's a hiccup, the business might go under. But if I live on $400,000 a year, then I have $9.6 million every year that I can go on the offensive, and I can take huge
basic math
swings. I can be like, I want to buy this company even though it's risky, but it might 10x, right? And that offense is what you have to do as an entrepreneur, because you have to take calculated risk, but you don't want to introduce multiple risk if you can control it. And this is controllable risk, okay? So you live below your means so you can stack cash, okay? Level 2 is that you take this cash, and I want to be clear, I'm actually kind of against side hustles as a long-term thing. I'm pro them as a way to transition. Again, this is how I play the game. I'm a maximizer, like I want to win big. And so I think if you follow my stuff that you probably want to win big too. And so if you're doing a side hustle, it's because you want it to eventually become your main hustle, not because you're just looking for side income. I'm just not that guy. There's other guys who will talk about that. It's just not me. All right. And so you stack the cash so you can start your side hustle, and you keep doing this until you have matched your income. So you start your side hustle and you keep doing it until you match your current income. And if you're like, wait a second, for me to match my current income, I'm gonna have to work 40 hours a week in my job and then work another 40 hours a week at this thing. Yup. And the thing is, and this is just, one man's caveat, there's gonna be different takes on this. If you're not making more money on 40 hours a week of the new thing, you're still not doing it right. Remember I went from employed to self-employed? You have a level of leverage. So those 40 hours, you have more leverage than the 40 hours that you're working for someone else. And if you're not making more there, then you still need to keep doing it until you've matched at least matched your income. And then once you've matched the income, I would say sustain it for 6 months. 2 reasons. One is because now you're gonna be making double time. You're gonna be making money on your job, you're gonna be making money on your income. So you're gonna be doubling your actual income, which means you might be like 3 or 4xing your savings. And the second is so that you don't just quit on the one good month you had because you sent out 3 clients. Okay, we want to make sure that it's not seasonal. We want to make sure that we can, it's not just normal volatility, because really small businesses, super volatile, right? If you're selling 2 customers a month, if all of a sudden you sell 0, your income goes to 0, right? Unless you retain the people, et cetera, et cetera. And then cut bait, cut the cord, and go out on your own. Spread those wings like a beautiful butterfly. And a lot of people look at this thing, the side hustle, and they're like, but this isn't Facebook. This isn't, sure, it's not. But I think a lot of people put undue pressure on themselves by expecting their next thing to be a $1 trillion company. And the likelihood that it happens, super small. But again, it's like, what are your goals? If your goals are just get out of poverty, get above the middle class, get into the upper class, a lot of businesses can get you there. If you want to be a trillionaire, there's only a few. And also what we don't see is the zillions of not Zuckerbergs who put everything into their social media thing and it didn't work. I'm a big fan of service businesses because it costs you nothing to start. It's just your time. You have no overhead in the beginning. Those ones are harder to scale, but you'll usually learn a lot of other skills during that process. I learned more from running a gym that allowed me to do gym launch. If I hadn't run the gyms, I don't think I would have been able to do gym launch. And so think of whatever this is as the stepping stone. And again, we're still trying to get learned. That doesn't change. We're just gonna also get paid as we do it. And that's one of the beautiful things about entrepreneurship is that once you get past a certain level, you get to get paid to learn more. And I think that's for me why I love the game so much, is that you just keep getting better and get paid to get better. Don't judge yourself on the side hustle, and especially don't listen to other people's judgment on your side hustle. You know how many people, I was Vanderbilt, magna cum laude, white collar consultant job, had a above Harvard, GMAT score, say and you wanna become a trainer? The amount of people that I used to compete against, frenemies, whatever you want to call it, they were like, oh great, he's out of the race. You know what I mean? He's doing stuff to make himself happy, right? I was younger and I probably had more fucked up shit in my head then than I do now. But I used to just think about them all the time when I'd be sleeping on the floor and I'd be selling where I was like, they're not willing to do this. They're not willing to do this. They're not willing to do this. And then you come from behind, right? And you do Kobe and you work twice a day. Yeah. And while they're working their job and they have their 3 Series BMW and they're, going out to dinner and they have
they're lying to themselves, man. It's a lie, they're just fucking, like you said, they're fixed checks that they have to clear every month for them to just be able to keep doing it.
Football on the weekends in their fantasy league, and you have none of that.
Yeah. Comment down below your guys' thoughts on this one. I'm telling you, man, it's literally free training with him.
Just know that you're doing your 2 days during the summer or your 3 days during the summer, but because your rate of input is so much higher than theirs is, you will catch up and you will surpass them. And that's if you want to compare. And the main reason I don't think you should judge yourself on whatever you do is because, in my opinion, I'm married to the game, right? More than anything. I'm going to keep playing the game because I love the game. And so if you want to play the game a long time, then it's the game itself that you want to stick with rather than the vehicle you're in, right? Most entrepreneurs start more than one business over their career. You are above the business. The problem is that people identify so closely, their identity is their business, but you have to just think about it, and this is me just trying to give you a, big brother, what do you want to call it, piece of advice, but the further you can separate your identity and your self-worth from the worth of the business, the better off you'll be as an entrepreneur. Because you also start to see it as an asset that can be sold, can create value. In the asset, you can make hard decisions. Whereas if it's you're like, what will people think? It's I made a decision about a business that I own. That's okay. Simon Sinek has a great piece on this, but when I learned the difference between infinite and finite games, it really changed my perspective. The infinite frame will always beat the finite frame, and there are finite games within every infinite game. And so you have quarters, you have years, you have goals. These are all finite games that we play in an infinite game. And so when the US invaded Vietnam, we lost. Why did we lose? We lost a war of attrition, which was that they were willing to play the game longer than we were. All right, and so the difference between a finite and infinite game is that a finite game has known players, agreed upon rules, and an outcome, and an end. That's why it's finite. An infinite game has known and unknown players, it has no agreed upon rules, and the point of the game is to keep the game going. And so the problem that most entrepreneurs have is they approach an infinite game with a finite frame. They are the United States trying to invade Vietnam, and you will lose every time because there will be players who are playing with an infinite frame. And so let me give you two more
example in game right here.
Examples of this. If you want to get healthy, right, you don't win at health. There's no end goal to being healthy. You're like, okay, I'm done working out. I did it. I've achieved it, right? Of course not. Right? Same thing with marriage.
Yeah, that's true. That's when it goes into like a lifestyle, what they call it.
Right? Like the point isn't to get married. The point is to stay married. The point is to stay in the game, to keep the game going. Most of the games worth playing are infinite games, not finite games, which means the point is to just play. And so business, you don't win. The point isn't to finish, because even if you were trying to say finish first, it's like, by what metric? On what time period? Is there anyone who's been the richest man in the world for all time? No, of course not.
Exactly.
Means that anybody who would try to do that is coming from a finite frame. And so, but there have been people who've won the game of business, in my perspective, because they played their whole lives. If you want to be a stronger player and be somebody who can succeed as an entrepreneur, then the day you start playing is the day you win, and the day you stop playing is the day you lose.
Oh, the day.
And so the goal is to find games that you don't want to quit. That's where learning what you are into from executing.
The day you start is the day you win.
Is the mega win here. So for me, I found out that I actually liked business more than I liked fitness, which is crazy because I loved fitness, getting into fitness. But like the day I started my gym was the day my love for business outpaced my love for fitness. I was like, this is amazing. This is so cool. And so you have to find whatever that thing is. And I'm gonna be clear, like business sucks all the time. But it's just that if you're willing to play, and like there's plenty of times marriage sucks. There's plenty of times you don't want to work out. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to stop working out. It doesn't mean I'm going to stop being married. It doesn't mean I'm going to stop being in business. And so I think if you can unlock that frame that you want to play until the day you die, even if the vehicle changes, even if the players that you're playing with on the court change, then you'll be the guy who stays on the court the longest. You might think, oh, I don't like video editing, or oh, I don't like, dry cleaning, or I don't like mowing lawns, or I don't like washing cars, or whatever it is, right? But the higher up you get in business, the more all businesses are the same, right? You're going to have marketing, you're going to have sales, you're going to have product, you're going to have customer success or customer support, you're going to have IT, you're going to have finance, you're going to have legal. Like all these departments these functions will more or less exist in every business. And so my advice is, like, a lot of people quit industries when they really actually just quit a function of a job. And so like they're like, oh, entertainment wasn't for me. It's like, do you know how many jobs there are in entertainment? Like you might love sales sales in entertainment, and you were in the actual like product side, right, or the production side, or the support side. And so again, remember I said earlier that like if you stay in the same game longer, you'll be likely to get more reps in and you'll do better. Well, then maybe stay in the same industry but switch roles. Now, in a micro business like your side hustle, you'll get to taste all the roles and you'll find out the things that you like more. And that's where you can shift some of your attention there, and then you backfill people who are, because you have a little bit of context, good enough to do what you do better. You demonstrate, you document, you demonstrate, you duplicate, they duplicate, and then they run with it, right? And so today, for example, what I do looks very different than what I did 10 years ago, right? Like what I did 10 years ago was the highest value skill I had then, which was just closing. Like that's all I did. I had consults all day because I got trainers to train for me. I knew how to run the ads, and that didn't take me that long. It took me 2-3 hours a week to run the ads, make them, and manage them. The rest of my time was sitting in appointments and closing. And I had somebody else make the phone calls and text for me. So I would just sit there and close because that was the highest value thing I could do at the time. But the thing is that your baseline skill will continue to level up. If I lost everything then, like if I lost everything, I knew that I would sell cars during the day and I would strip at night. Right? Once I had that skill. Before I had the skill of sales, I would drive Uber during the day and strip at night because I had the skill of being in shape, right? And so your baseline continues to grow. Like being the best car salesman, you make 400, 500, maybe even $1 million a year at some of the best dealerships. Like if you're an absolute savage, and I would consider myself an absolute savage if I was going to do that, right? If I lost it all, I'd be there 12 hours a day for sure. And then once I learned how to marketing and sales together, my new minimum was $1 million a year because I knew that I could sit in front of any brick and mortar business and I could get them leads and I could close them. Once you have that, you can make $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. Like I can't go below that because I have skills that are above that, right? You keep learning these skills as you keep doing your business, and you might you'll start ping-ponging in different directions until you hone in on the things that you're best at. And so I think if you can find that game, make it the meta skill of continuing to learn, then you won't stop. And then at that point, it means you win by default. So we had talked about a lot of stuff.
Bro,
right?
that's a fucking banger, guys. Like, it was what is it, 56 minutes of free fucking game, man. Like,
But the question
bro just showed you guys how to run a fucking business and how to just run your own mindset, like, as well.
is like, what's the next thing you're gonna do? And so I'm just gonna give you the advice that I followed, which is like, what was the first thing I did to get myself out of this $1 million or below $1 million category to the above $1 million category, and then to eventually the 0.4%, $10 million category. And it was actually just learning how to sell. Because if you can't sell anything, you can't make money. It's the first part of the equation. Number of sales times. If you have no sales, it doesn't matter how good the lifetime value is, if no one buys it, zero. So I have what we call the best sales training on the internet. It's a long keynote that I did that people really dig, and I think you'll hopefully like it and get as much from it as it took me years to consolidate it for you. It's a good bargain on your time to get 10 years of sales training into an hour. So enjoy.